Growing up in Westridge, I was always the quiet one, the girl who existed in the periphery while my brother gleamed like a polished silver trophy. I remember each family gathering vividly, each setting resembling the last with the same laughter echoing in the walls of our home, but this time it was more like a haunting refrain than a song of joy. As our relatives swarmed around him, showering him with compliments, his laughter resonated like chimes on a windy day, floating above the din of voices. Light danced in his eyes as he regaled stories. Meanwhile, I melted into the shadows, slipping easily into the background, all too familiar with the ache of being unnoticed. I could not even recall the last time someone praised me without it being a passing remark. "Are you excited for the family reunion this weekend?" my mother asked me casually as we prepared dinner, chopping vegetables and stirring a pot of steaming sauce. My knife clattered against the cutting board, the sharp edge offering a release for my frustration, but I caught her watchful eye in the reflection of the knife's blade. She always had that maternal instinct attuned to detect any hint of my discomfort. "Sure," I managed, forcing a half-hearted smile. "Your brother has been working hard at his new startup. This could be his year," she said, her voice bubbling with pride, while my heart sank like a lead balloon. "Right," I replied, swallowing hard as I felt the familiar knot tightening in my chest. All my sacrifices, all my long nights juggling 2 jobs while he sauntered through college with ease, only to find my accomplishments relegated to the shadowy corners of their minds. "I hope he does well." The kitchen air was thick with the aroma of roasted garlic and herbs, but all I could taste was bitterness. In the evenings, when the world quieted down, I often found myself reflecting on those moments where silence pulsed loudly, drowning me out in a family that thrived on my brother's talent. "Hey, remember when Amelia graduated college after working 2 jobs?" my parents would say, but their enthusiasm was rarely sustained. It felt like they applauded out of obligation rather than genuine pride. And then came the day that tore through our family like a knife cutting through flesh. Our grandfather, who always took the time to sit with me, who asked me about my life, had passed. The house felt devoid of warmth, the air heavy with unspoken emotions. I thought his inheritance could somehow repair the fissures in our family dynamics, maybe even shift the spotlight away from my brother, if only for a moment. I imagined what it would be like to be recognized, even just once. As the gathering pulsed with the energy of grief, I stood a few feet away, struggling to mingle as the adults shared respectful anecdotes and mutual condolences, while I hovered at the edges, an uncomfortable witness to this swirling tide of sorrow. My heart took an upward leap when my parents announced that they had decided on the distribution of the inheritance, their voices thick like honey. "After careful consideration," my father began, steel-set determination flaring in his eyes as he adjusted his glasses, "we have decided to invest the entire inheritance into your brother's future business ventures." The room buzzed with applause and congratulatory hugs, but all I felt was a deafening silence hovering above me. "What?" I gasped out loud, the disbelief coursing through my veins like ice water. It was as if the world had stopped for just a moment. The applause faded into a haunting hum against the backdrop of my own heart pounding wildly in my chest. My mother turned to me, a mixture of sympathy and frustration etched on her face. "Amelia, we know you have worked very hard, but your brother has such potential, and this money could really help him launch something great." "Help him," I shouted, feeling the heat rise to my face, the tears threatening to spill. "You mean reward him for being him? You don't even see what I've accomplished, do you? You act like I haven't sacrificed so much to climb out of debt, to make something of myself. What about me? What about everything I've done?" The murmurs of family members hushed as they turned to me, surprise tinged with disapproval, but I could not stop. The words tumbled out as if they had been trapped inside me for ages. "I graduated college with 2 jobs, juggling classes while he played around, and he gets all of this. You have no idea how hard I've worked. You never cared." My father's brow furrowed, his disappointment radiating off him like heat waves. "We are proud of you, Amelia. We just think your brother needs this opportunity more at the moment." "More," I echoed harshly, my voice trembling as I wrestled with the anger gnawing at my insides. "What about my future? I might as well not exist in this family." I turned on my heels, the taste of tears seething at the back of my throat, but I slap away the frustration swelling in my chest. I could feel their gazes shift back to my brother as if I had been erased. That evening, I sat alone on the porch, surrounded by the twilight shadows of Westridge. The air felt thick and heavy, a dark entity pressing down on me. I felt invisible, a ghost among the living, the pain of betrayal overwhelming. As darkness enveloped my surroundings, a singular thought flickered through my mind like the fireflies dancing in the twilight, a vow that shimmered with clarity and resolve. I would make them see me. I would rise from this shadow, not just to reclaim my worth, but to turn the tables on a lifetime of being overlooked. I couldn't let this be my end. This was just the beginning. Frustration boiled inside me as I watched my brother's laughter fill the living room, an echoing mockery of the lavish life he was about to embrace. A week had passed since the family meeting where our parents announced they would fund his new apartment in the city. I sat silently at the table, fingers trembling around the edge of my old laptop, feeling the weight of their betrayal settle heavily in my chest. Each chuckle he let out was like salt in an open wound, and I couldn't help but clench my teeth in defiance. Inside, my mind swirled with arguments I rehearsed in the privacy of my room, where nobody could hear me shout. "Mom, Dad, that money should have been shared. Why does he deserve it all? I'm the one juggling 2 jobs and studying to pay off these student loans." But every time I imagined their dismissive expressions, just the thought sent a wave of anxiety washing over me. My heart raced. Would they even listen? More likely, they would brush me off, wave their hands dismissively, and tell me to think positively. With clenched fists, I turned from the scene unfolding in the living room. I retreated to my tiny bedroom, littered with textbooks and clothes that didn't quite fit anymore. The walls closed in on me, trapping me in a whirlwind of anxiety and despair. Memories of late-night study sessions and coffee that had long grown cold played in loop. "How did it come to this?" I whispered to myself, my voice barely above a murmur. I wondered if anyone understood the pressure I was under, if anyone cared about the sacrifices I had made. Determined to push away the turmoil brewing inside of me, I decided, rather reluctantly, to clean out the attic. I fished an old pair of dusty jeans out of my closet, pulled on a worn-out t-shirt, and trekked upstairs with nothing but a candle in one hand and a determination to bury my feelings through some physical labor. The attic was a haven for old memories, a musky air filled with the scent of damp wood and forgotten items. Dust motes danced in the soft glow of my candlelight, creating an almost ethereal ambience. It was a disaster zone up there, an overwhelming jumble of boxes, oversized furniture, and objects that had long lost their purpose. Each step I took released a cloud of dust, and with it, a sensation of nostalgia washed over me. I nudged aside half-broken lamps and boxes of clothes that had belonged to my grandfather, wondering why he had held on to them for so long. Who would ever want a box of moth-eaten sweaters? I thumbed through a few mildewy boxes, pulling out old photographs of a time that felt distant and alien. My heart warmed for a moment as I held up a faded picture of my grandmother wearing a hat adorned with flowers, a cheeky smile on her face. But the warmth was minutes away from turning cold. I shoved it back into the box with irritation, as if the very sight of those happy times was mocking me for my reality. Then, tucked away in a corner, I spotted an old chest, its wood charred in places, but somehow still intact. My heart raced with curiosity and a sense of foreboding. What could my grandfather have hidden in there? I knelt down, the rough floorboards protesting under my weight as I brushed away the dust coating the chest. Running my fingers over the smooth wooden surface, I felt an odd connection to my past, a longing for answers. With a creak that echoed in the silence of the attic, the lid popped open, revealing a trove of memories. Faded photographs, letters yellowing with age, and keepsakes that carried echoes of laughter and sorrow. But there, nestled between a stack of old letters, was a slip of paper that caught my breath. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it, and upon reading the neatly written words, my heart dropped. There it was, crystal clear. Hidden cash reserve, $50,000 for emergencies. Fury ignited within me, a raging inferno burning away the insecurities that had plagued me for the past week. My eyes welled with tears, not of sadness but of outrage. The truth was right before me, a visceral reminder that my parents had lied. They were keeping money from me, money that I could use to finally ease the strain of my student loans. Emergency fund? I scoffed quietly. More like an emergency betrayal. As I dug further into the chest, I envisioned my plan taking form. My hands moved almost mechanically, sifting through the contents as my rage simmered to a boil, fueling my desire for justice. There was no more room for fear. I had proof. I could expose them as frauds, unmask their comfortable facade. "Mom, Dad, how could you?" I whispered into the empty air of the attic. The shadows surrounding me seemed to nod in agreement. It was time to take control of the narrative, to no longer be the silent victim. A rush of emotions surged, anger, desperation, and a flicker of vindication. "You're going to regret this," I promised the air, gaze blazing as I clutched the piece of paper tightly in my grasp, allowing the flames of my anger to wash over me, envisioning the confrontation that awaited. "I will make you pay for what you've done." Each word felt like a vow, a summoning, and as I closed the lid of the chest, I felt a renewed purpose, the foundation of my plan firmly set. The chest could remain sealed for years, but my anger was unleashed. I would show them that I was no longer the quiet sister in the background. I was turning the tide. The air in the room felt thick, almost electric, as I gathered my family for what was to be the most pivotal moment of my life. It pulsed with the anxiety of unsaid words and unresolved hurt. Clutching the letter tightly in my trembling hand, I could feel the crisp edges digging into my palm like the clawing roots of a long-buried grievance. My parents, seated comfortably on the couch, wore expressions of naive cheerfulness, blissfully unaware of the tempest brewing within me. It was surreal, really, how they smiled, completely oblivious to the chaos threatening to dismantle our carefully curated family portrait. "Everyone, please sit down. We need to talk," I said, my voice more steady than I felt. I could see the light dim in my mother's eyes, her delight fading as she picked up on my tone. The sunbeam cutting through the window might have felt warm and inviting to others, but to me it plunged into shadows. My brother leaned forward slightly, curiosity dancing on his features, as if sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "What is it, Amelia? You look serious," he remarked, his quizzical expression fueling my resolve. I took a deep breath, summoning the determination coursing through my veins like fire. "I found something," I began, laying the note carefully on the coffee table, its presence heavy and accusatory between us. "A letter from Grandpa." My heart thudded in my chest. The gravity of revealing my family's secrets to their faces loomed high in the air like a storm cloud on a sunny day. Upon seeing the letter, my mother's expression shifted from curiosity to alarm. "What are you talking about? What letter?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern, as she exchanged a quick glance with my father. I could almost sense the unspoken communication, their instinct to shield one another from any perceived threat. "It is a letter where he expresses his intentions about our family legacy," I continued, keeping my gaze locked onto the worn paper as if it were a lifeline, not just for me, but for the hidden truths that had been lurking beneath our surface. "But it seems like you twisted his intentions into something else entirely." I was surprised at how those words poured out, fueled by years of unrecognized pain. A tense silence enveloped us, heavy like the oppressive heat of a summer afternoon. The silence, thick and suffocating, told me I had struck the core. For an agonizing moment, I thought perhaps I had gone too far, asking for honesty when deception had been the family norm. Then, like a dam breaking, my brother erupted. "This is ridiculous. You are sullying our family's good name with your accusations." "How could you do this?" The disbelief and anger flashing in his eyes stung like a cold slap to my face. "You are dishonoring everyone. This is not what we do." I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, a mixture of embarrassment and anger. "Do you even hear yourself? This is exactly why I am confronting them. This facade of normalcy is built on lies." I directed the onslaught of my emotions entirely toward him, channeling the frustration of being the unseen child, the one who often stood in the shadows of favoritism. My mother's gasp pierced through the commotion, her jaw dropping in disbelief. "Amelia, how could you even think that? We love you like we love your brother." She had grown pale, and disbelief rippled through her features like a subtle fog turning into a heavy mist. "You must be mistaken," she added weakly. "Your love has always felt conditional." "Where were you when they praised him like he was some golden child?" I pressed, each word like a knife carving through years of pent-up resentment. The way they had always turned a blind eye to the injustices I faced felt particularly crippling now, exposing years of insecurity and longing for acceptance. "No one is perfect," my father finally spoke, his voice low and gravelly, but his silence spoke of something deeper: guilt. He could only stare at the ground, his fingers nervously fidgeting with a loose thread on his sleeve. "We tried to do our best." His words trailed off, as if crumbling under the weight of my accusations. "And your best hurt me." I said, my own voice breaking. The vulnerability hung in the air, crystallizing my long-buried feelings. I felt exposed yet strangely empowered. You raised a version of me that was meant to compete and strive for attention. You manipulated your own father's intentions as if they were weapons to wield against me every time I fell short. Oh, come on, this is absurd. Grandpa would never have meant that, my brother retorted, his face flushed with indignation. Would he? Or did you just choose to believe what you wanted? I shot back, my pulse racing. I could see the tension building in my father's furrowed brow as he glanced nervously between us. My mother's face twisted in anguish as if the very notion of family discord was unbearable for her. We didn't want you two to compete. We thought we were raising you both equally, she stammered, clenching her fists tightly on her lap. Equal? You call this equal? I gestured emphatically at the cramped living room, the scent of furniture polish mingling with the warmth of the sunlight filtering through the window. Your favoritism screamed otherwise. At that, I watched as horror slowly painted itself across their faces, a dawning realization that perhaps the unspoken rules of our family had been woven with threads of deception. With every word, the facade of our picture-perfect family began to disintegrate, leaving raw wounds erupting in the open air we breathed, the unspeakable truths clawing their way to freedom. The weight of our family's secrets had become unbearably heavy, and as I stood there, standing my ground against the very people who were supposed to protect and love me, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The storm had finally arrived, and with each passing moment, it threatened to wash away the lies that had kept us shackled for so long. The air in the room became thick, nearly suffocating, as the realization dawned upon my parents that their carefully woven tapestry of lies was unraveling before us. My mother, with her perfectly coiffed hair and the faint scent of lavender emanating from her, shifted in her chair. She attempted to play off the hidden cash as an innocent remnant of grandparents' old ways, her voice dripping with precarious calm. Oh, dear, those old folks just prep for everything. You know how they were. It's just a little stash I found. I could see the disbelief wash over my brother's face, his usually confident demeanor quickly faltering into uncertainty. The questions swirled in his mind like a storm. But that money was supposed to be for emergencies, Mom. What emergencies did you use it for? He asked, a tremor in his voice that made my stomach churn. His brow furrowed deeply, and I could sense the spark of fear igniting in him, teeth clenching as he awaited their response. My pulse quickened, a mix of anticipation and fury surging through me. I directed my eyes to my parents, forcing them to feel the weight of my gaze like a spotlight focused entirely on them, unyielding, demanding clarity. How can you dismiss this? I interjected, my voice unwavering, laced with an adrenaline-fueled determination. You have to explain yourselves. Are we really supposed to believe that this cash is merely a relic? My mother's composure cracked slightly, an involuntary twitch at the corner of her mouth giving away her nerves. She glanced at my father, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the tension in the room palpable as the silence stretched. I could practically hear the hammering of my own heart, reverberating the thrill of the forthcoming reckoning. The satisfied part of me took pleasure in their unease, relishing each moment they squirmed under my scrutiny. You've always spent so generously on him, haven't you? I thrust my chin towards my brother, who was looking more lost by the segundo. Why were you keeping this from me? What was the plan, burying riches while I drowned under the weight of my loans? My father's furrowed brow bunched together, frustration seeped into his expression. It's not what you think. Amelia, listen. He had the audacity to plead now, a stark contrast to the cold dismissal I had become accustomed to. We only wanted what was best for your brother. He's got dreams, ambitious ventures. Dreams? I spat, anger bubbling within me. While I've been struggling to make ends meet. You robbed me of my own chance to succeed. The echo of my words hung in the air, heavy and loaded, like a target waiting to be hit. My brother shot a glance my way, fear mixing with confusion. Amelia, what are you talking about? I didn't know anything about. Ignoring him, I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a colder whisper. Admit it. You took that money for yourselves, didn't you? Just supporting your golden child while I scrambled to pay my tuition and debts. Enough. My mother finally snapped, her voice breaking the tension with a sharp edge. We did what we thought was right. You have no idea how hard we worked to ensure you both have a future. Yet you hid money under the floorboards, I retorted, feeling like every word was a drawn bullet finding its mark. What else have you concealed from me? Did you waste my inheritance on your whims, too? Am I just an afterthought? I let the words tumble out, fueled by the fire of betrayal that had been smoldering for years, suddenly erupting into a full-blown inferno. Then it happened, suddenly and with a bang. My brother leaned back, dislodged from the throne of confidence he had sat on so comfortably, staring wide-eyed at our parents. The weight of their inaction crashed down on him like a wave. "What do you mean by that?" he mumbled, shaking his head as if to clear away some cobwebs. You took from us, didn't you?" My mother's facade cracked entirely then, a single tear racing down her cheek, making me want to reach for her. But I held fast, too furious to falter now, while my father turned away, rubbing a hand over his face in a futile attempt to stave off accountability. "Admit it," I demanded again. "You used that money for your own needs while I was drowning in loans." "I did what every parent does," my father said, voice heavy with the weight of his guilty conscience as he exhaled heavily, defeated. "We wanted to help. We thought supporting your brother's business would keep him on the right path, while leaving me behind." I felt the walls of my heart tremble under the strain of raw emotion as I processed their betrayal. My brother seemed to shrink in that moment, every ounce of his confidence eroded as the tide of truth swept through. "It's not just money. You took trust, security, everything," I breathed, my heart racing. The fallout was instantaneous, the air thick with tension, the moment electric. My brother's eyes shifted, wide and panicked, grappling with the truth. "I trusted you guys. This isn't just about money anymore. You've ruined my relationships, my successes." I could almost taste the bitterness lingering in the silence that followed, piercing through the fabric of our family as it hung there, stretched taut, ready to snap. He looked around the room, the confidence that once defined him now ruptured, and I felt the satisfaction of revenge fill the room, but at a cost. Our trust lay shattered on the floor, pieces glistening in despair. And there we were, each of us trapped within our roles, victim, perpetrator, and bystander, caught in the aftermath of shattered illusions, powdered by a fragile alliance now turned to dust. My heart ached for my brother, even as the thrill coursed through me like wildfire. I had exacted my retribution, but at what price? The room was filled with a heavy tension, each breath echoing the unspoken animosities among us. The air felt thick, as if the walls themselves were pushing back against the weight of bitter truths and festering lies. Sunlight poured in through the tall windows, casting sharp lines across the floor, illuminating the faces of my family who had gathered to discuss our grandfather's will. I stood at the center of this storm, my heart hammering against my ribs, feeling the fire in my chest grow hotter. It was time to lay everything bare. "Enough of this," I said, my voice echoing off the wooden panels. The murmurings quieted down like the crackle of a fading fire. "This is about my grandfather's wishes, not your hurt feelings." I glanced around the room, locking eyes with each familiar face, my parents, my siblings, their spouses. The anger I had harbored for so long bubbled to the surface, uncontrollable now that the moment had arrived. "You think I don't deserve my share?" I challenged, the heat rising in my cheeks. "Do you think I'm some kind of charity case, just because I chose a different path than you all?" The stunned silence that followed felt like a vacuum, pulling everyone into my orbit where I had always felt invisible. I took a breath, tasting the bitterness that lingered in the air, and pressed on. "Grandfather wanted us all to have an equal share. I demand it." My mother let out a scoff, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, which only fueled the fire in my belly. "Amelia, you don't know how things work in our family. You know very well how your grandfather felt about your choices. You made your bed." "No," I interjected, my voice rising higher, cutting through her condescension. "He always believed in fairness. You all talked behind my back, pretending to be supportive, but I always felt your judgment. Your sneers when I chose to pursue art instead of a real job. Your looks of pity every time I stumbled in life." My throat felt tight, but I pushed through, the culmination of years of feeling overlooked crashing down around us. "But here's the truth. I built my life on my own terms. You think that gives you the right to push me aside? Not anymore." The older faces shifted, the lines of disdain morphing into expressions of guilt. I felt a rush of power surge through me, newfound confidence mingling with the anger that had fueled this encounter. My mother's bravado began to wane. I could see the cracks forming in her carefully crafted facade. "Let us be reasonable, Amelia," my father said slowly, breaking the fragile silence. His brow furrowed, a sign he was having difficulty swallowing my truth. "You know how your grandfather thought. You're not even a part of this family's legacy in the way your siblings are." Legacy, I echoed. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. What legacy? The kind where I am left to scrounge for table scraps. You chose to honor his memory by excluding me. Well, today I change that. My pulse pounded in my ears, a symphony of adrenaline masking the fear urging me to retreat. I will not be pushed into the shadows anymore. I refuse to be the family disgrace you've painted me as. You can't ignore me. I'm here, and I am family. The tension swirled, bouncing off the walls like a trapped animal seeking a way out. Each family member's expression carved deeper into the surface of my resolve. I noticed how they shifted uncomfortably in their seats, realizing they could no longer downplay me, nor my significance. I had stepped out from the shadows and was challenging the roles they had forced upon me. You're being unfair, my sister finally spoke. Her voice, usually so filled with confidence, lacked its normal bite, revealing a hint of uncertainty. Grandpa wanted us to stick together, not fight amongst ourselves. This isn't the way to honor him. I shook my head, the sting of betrayal sharp as glass. No, your way of honoring him was to pretend I didn't exist. The fight is here already, whether we admit it or not. You all slotted me out of the inheritance without a second thought. You thought I wouldn't notice, but I did, and I've endured your whispers all my life. As I continued, my voice steadied. I will honor him. I will take my rightful share. Finally, my parents exchanged glances that spoke volumes of their own insecurities and fears, as if they had been stripped bare before me. All right, my mother finally relented, her tone begrudging. If it means breaking the family apart, we can agree on this. We will honor the will exactly as it was written. But we want you to work with us moving forward, on family matters. My heart soared. I inhaled deeply, the taste of salt from unshed tears mingling with the sweet scent of vindication. So it's settled, I said, a smile breaking across my face. My siblings followed my parents' lead, shoulders slumping. They nodded in hesitant agreement, perhaps fueled by a sense of shame or acknowledgement of their wrongs. As I walked away from that meeting, a sense of profound relief washed over me. This was not just about money. It was my first step toward reclaiming my identity, the dignity that had been stripped away, piece by piece, throughout my life. The shadows receded, and in that moment, in the glaring light of truth, I found my place in the family I once felt alienated from. For the first time, I could breathe, knowing I belonged not just as an afterthought, but as someone worthy of respect, fully present in the family's legacy. I had claimed my worth, and with it, finally unleashed my spirit. The days that followed were charged with a new energy, a kind of electric hum that buzzed through my veins every time I woke in the morning. It felt different, like the heavy weight of past burdens had been lifted. Light as a feather, they said. I could actually breathe, and it surprised me how being unshackled could stir up so much life around me. While my brother stumbled and struggled to adapt to the loss of our parents' support, the truth we had all skirted began to resurface. I had changed the tide of our family dynamic with my choices, and it felt terrifyingly glorious. Have you seen the way he looks? I overheard my cousin whisper to another relative as we stood in our grandmother's living room, a subtle bloom of chairs filled with distant family members and their dark coffee cups. He hasn't brushed his hair in days. I watched my brother from the corner of my eye, sitting slumped in a chair, staring numbly at the old, worn floorboards as if they would offer him guidance. Even the dull creak of the wood under his weight seemed to mock him. My heart twisted at the sight, yet there was a strange satisfaction bubbling within me, something I dared not voice. I had fought for my place in this family, and while we were bound by blood, I felt like an outsider watching an old film unfold, a film where I somehow had become the hero. You should talk to him, another cousin advised, her voice low but full of concern. Her brows knitted in thought. He needs you now more than ever. I shook my head, the idea swirling just beyond my reach. Maybe he needs to learn a lesson, I muttered under my breath. The taste of those words lingered on my tongue like bitter ash, an uncomfortable conflict wrestling in my chest. But the reality was startlingly clear. I had emerged from the shadows of my parents' choices, and with my newfound inheritance, I had wiped out my student loans. The act had felt like casting away chains that held me to an identity I had long resisted. I reveled in that freedom, my spirit soaring. The echoes of their disappointed silence followed me everywhere, yet it was comforting, almost powerful. Hey, Amelia, my cousin nudged me, her eyes sparkling with that unshakable spirit of family. Do you want to take a walk outside for some fresh air? Yes, definitely. I accepted the invitation with an eager nod. Outside, the late afternoon sky wore a hazy orange coat, the kind of sky that reminds you of new beginnings. We stepped out onto the porch, and I inhaled deeply, letting the cool breeze coil around me like a warm blanket. "Has he said anything to you?" my cousin asked as we wandered down the steps, her voice softer now, as if she feared stirring up trouble. "No, and I don't think he should," I replied, the firmness in my tone surprising me. "He needs to figure out what life feels like without the safety net. For too long, he was sheltered from the consequences of our parents' decisions. It hurt us both, but now it's my turn to breathe." Her face showed a flicker of understanding, but I knew it wouldn't be easy for her to accept. "I get that. You have every right to feel that way. But he's lost, Amelia. Don't let hate push you away from family." "It'll eat you alive." I wanted to argue, to push back, but an inner voice told me to listen. I could feel the tension of our situation creeping back in, so I took a breath, trying to erase the biting bitterness hidden within me. I don't want to carry this resentment. I have fought too hard to break free, you know." She nodded, gently resting a hand on my shoulder. "You have every right to be happy, and it sounds like you finally are." We stood there for a moment, watching the sun slowly sink below the horizon, the world washing itself in hues of crimson and lavender. The beauty of it reminded me that I was forging not just a new chapter for myself, but for us all, one where I was no longer content to be a shadow, but a brilliant force of light. When my brother finally emerged from his cloud of despair, he looked startlingly different, disheveled hair sticking out in wild angles, eyes rimmed red like he had seen too many dark nights. His voice was thick and strained when he spoke my name as if rehearsing it for the first time. "Amelia!" The whole world seemed to still. "Yeah," I responded, my heartbeat accelerating, anticipation flooding my system. I need to talk," he said, the words tumbling out in a jumbled mess. It was a far cry from the arrogance and smugness I was used to. "Okay," I replied cautiously, taking a small step forward. "Let's go inside." The chill of the living room contrasted with the warmth of the sun still lingering in my veins, but I felt my view of him soften. I watched as he fidgeted with a loose thread on his sweater, his nerves wrapping around him tighter than the fabric itself. Why did you get away?" He finally blurted, his gaze shifting to the wall as if the painted flowers could offer him answers. "You should hate me." "But I don't," I admitted, fidgeting with my own hands now. "I cannot afford to hate you, not when I should be focusing on finding my own peace. You need to wake up, though this is our new reality." His eyes flickered up to meet mine, a flash of understanding sparking there, but it flickered back to confusion. "What do you mean?" "I mean it's time for us to own our lives," I said, the words slippery yet freeing as they tumbled from my lips. "To acknowledge what our parents did without letting it define us any longer. They've lost everything, and we need to find what we've gained instead." He looked like he was still processing this concept, the light beginning to dawn in his gaze. Breath catching in my throat, I knew we were standing on the precipice of something massive, a new chapter truly woven together, one where the roles had shifted. "No longer shadows," I added vaguely, echoing the sentiment that had warmed me in moments of doubt. "Just a new beginning." Silence enveloped us for a moment as I braced myself for the next words. I wanted to say something that would bridge the chasm between us, but the air hung heavy with our shared history, shaping and reshaping what could come next. In that tight, tense silence, I recognized it. The wound of betrayal might not heal overnight, but standing against it had birthed resilience. And perhaps, just perhaps, that energy would illuminate our path forward together, even if it meant starting from scratch.